It's Valentine's Day. Well, for me, not for you. And if you get that reference, we are on the exact same side of TikTok and I love it, but most of you probably won't know what I'm talking about, but that's okay. So it is Valentine's Day for me. This video isn't going out on Valentine's Day, but what better day than today to talk about books that feature unhinged female characters. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie, and today we are focusing on crazy women, my favorite topic. I love women, I support women's rights, I support women's wrongs, and everything in between, as long as it's, you know, understandable or justified. So today we're talking about a kind of subgenre, I guess, of weird girl lit, which is unhinged women and just, you know, them letting out their aggression and rage and weirdness and awfulness also. So I love reading books that have unhinged crazy women in them as their main characters or just as other characters as well, and so I thought I would just do a video recommending my faves based on 3 different categories they'll fall under. The first category will be female rage, which, you know, that's a good one. Second category will be like mentally unwell women, but also the absurdity of it as well. And then third one is women you love to hate. This is all done in a positive light for women and kind of showcasing that every type of woman is great and wonderful, and Valentine's Day, whether you have a partner or not and you're a woman, I still want you to feel loved, and self-love is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. On that note, let's talk about the books. If you are like me and love reading books that feature female rage that is very, very justified, or even just not justified but still like very intriguing, this is the section for you. I have 4 books to recommend, each slightly different. I'll give you kind of an overview of why I added each book to the list, and then I'll give you a synopsis as well of what the book is. So, first book. If you want a female main character that fights the patriarchy and everything that goes along with it, then I recommend Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao. This is the first in a duology. The second one has come out. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I think this is the epitome of female rage and doing whatever she needs to get what she wants, and I loved it, and the ending was very insane and went further than I was expecting, so I'm very curious where the next book ends up. This book is a sci-fi fantasy mix. In this book we are in a world very similar to China. There's the Great Wall, that in order to power these giant transforming mechas called chrysalises, they need a yin and yang duo to power. So the male pilots are basically revered and everyone fawns over them. They're filmed constantly, they're like celebrities. And the women are used as just basically chi forces to help the man pilot the machines, so they typically die in the process of utilizing the chrysalises. So our main character, Zetian's sister, is one of those women that was taken into the army in order to be utilized by one of the male pilots, and she ends up dying, and so Zetian decides to join as well to find the male pilot that killed her sister and, you know, get her revenge, and in doing so realize she is more powerful than she thinks she is, and then at the same time tries to topple everything that everyone knows about this world and how it's run, and fights for what she wants. And so it gets kind of crazy, I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely more brutal than I was expecting, and so that was fun, and the ending threw me for a loop. It wasn't super shocking, but also I'm very curious how it'll end. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's kind of this war with these other like mechanical beings, which is why they fight these chrysalises in order to keep their city and country and land. And so that's a big piece of this as well. But very good action, very well written, like scenes. I wouldn't say the romance in this is very like great. It does end up in like a throuple. If you haven't heard of this book, that's what most people know about this book. And so a real love triangle, one would say. I wouldn't say that was like the main focus of this book or the best part about this book, but this is very much like a book about like hating men, except for like, you know, the few exceptions. So if you want to read something along those lines, this is the book for you. Second book for the female rage category is a book about a female psychopath who thinks men are playthings as well as food, and that is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. I loved this book, though it will not be for everyone. We follow Dorothy, who is a 51-year-old former food critic, talking about her life and her sexual exploits, her time in the food industry, as well as her unique appetite and very interesting culinary skills. And so it is very much a lot about the food industry and how it works. She goes between Italy and the US a lot, so you get a lot about the Italian food industry, and then like how things are made, or like the processes involved in making food, like around meat and butchering and all of that. So it's not like that intense in that area, but there's a lot about that. So I think that's why a lot of people don't end up liking this book or could get bored. But I think just the pure psychopathness of Dorothy is so new and interesting, and it's written in a very unique way, and it's very short, so it doesn't take that long to get through. But I very much thoroughly enjoyed it, and she just, you know, she does what she wants to do with these men. And this is where I kind of mentioned, I'm not sure it's super justifiable in this book, but knowing she's a psychopath, like, you're not like really on her side necessarily, but you're just kind of there for the wild ride of her recounting her past. So really fun one, but also not for everyone, because, you know, there are some graphic scenes as well. Number 3 on my female rage list is the newest edition. If you want religious persecution, being a woman in old Puritan times, as well as kind of a rage transformation, this book is for you. This is Slewfoot by Brom. This one I loved. I was so intrigued by the start of this book. It was not what I was expecting. It does get pretty brutal and difficult because there is a lot of religious persecution and awful things that happen to our main character, but I will say we get the retribution we want. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think people want to know that that happens before reading this book, because if you read this book without that happening, that would be like the worst thing ever. So we follow Abatha, who was sent from London to the Puritan colonies to marry a man and, you know, live a life. So she's basically a mail order bride, and they live in this very extremely Puritan town where she has no say, very different from where she grew up. She's helping her husband try to save their farm and buy it back from his brother, who is awful and treats them awfully. And something happens where the brother wants the farm back, and she has to fight for her survival as well as maintaining the farm, and some mysterious forces help her along the way. I don't really want to say more instead of reading this not knowing anything really, because it's a lot, but this book had really interesting conversations around God and religion that I don't typically enjoy, but I thought some of them were like kind of funny in the way that they were happening. And so I think it is really well done if you like stuff around religion and especially Puritan culture, and then, you know, everyone getting their comeuppance at the end. So highly recommend. And the last book in the female rage category is a book that features a main character that is abused and sheltered from everyday life. Lots of rules are put upon her and her sisters, and that is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. This one I've talked about a few times on the channel already. We follow Marlinchin, who has 2 sisters, and her father, who is kind of like the last real wizard in their city, and so people come to them for all kinds of wizardy things, potions, spells, you know. And so their father is very abusive, doesn't let them leave their property or their house at all. And so they do sometimes sneak out at night when he's asleep to go explore the city and mainly go to the ballet. And so at the ballet, she meets one of the ballet dancers, and you know, she starts sneaking out more and stuff, and at the same time there's this monster wreaking havoc in the city as well. We follow her, you know, trying to find her independence and figuring out what's going on with the city. And so yeah, it's a very hard read also, I would say. All of these I feel like might be, but I really enjoyed this one, and I think this is my favorite Ava read so far, so highly recommend if you can handle it. Check trigger warnings for this one for sure though. I think all of these, I mean, yeah, all of these. Category number 2 is female characters that are mentally unwell. I won't say like mentally unstable, but the way their mind works is very different from other typical people, more so in like who they think they are. And so this hits the absurdity level as well. And so I have 3 books to recommend for you. One book, she thinks she's a mermaid. Second book, she thinks she's a dog. And third book, she thinks she's an alien. So that's what we have for you on deck. We'll start with the girl who thinks she's a mermaid. This is Chlorine by Jade Song. So growing up, Ren discovers stories and books around mermaids, and she truly believes that that is who she is meant to become. And so in order to start that process, she decides to join a competitive swimming team so she can constantly be in the water, and she meets a friend slash slight lover along the way. And we hear all about how awful, you know, some like private competitive swim teams are run and how they're coached and all of that whole kind of abuse in that sense as well. Her weird relationships with her coach and her family because of it, and her friends, and just we follow her on her journey to truly become who she is, which is a mermaid. And it gets pretty brutal at times. There's some body horror in here, but it's a very interesting read and a very interesting perspective coming from someone who thinks they are something, like wholeheartedly. And so I thought it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it, and so I highly recommend that one. So if that's something you're looking for, someone who thinks they're not human, then this is definitely, first off, the category for you, but also a great book for you if you like more of like a horror leaning storyline as well. And for the book where the woman thinks she's a dog, this might come as no surprise to you, but that is Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder. Kaylin and I recently watched the movie that is out on Hulu featuring Amy Adams, and I thought it was pretty well done. Like, very, very different. It does stray pretty far from the story, but also like it's its own thing. I would separate them as 2 different things. So even if you've seen that movie, this is very different, and I would still recommend it. But we follow a mother who is a stay-at-home mom, and her husband is gone most of the week on travel for business, and so she's stuck staying at home taking care of her toddler, and her whole life is her toddler, and she hates it. This is not what she wanted. She was originally an artist, and she misses that part of her, but she feels like that part of her is dead. And so she meets this other mother and a group of other mothers at this book babies thing at the library, and starts to realize that there's might be more to life than just being a mom, or that she can kind of make motherhood into whatever she wants it to be. And she starts to feel like she is becoming a dog. She feels like she's growing canines. She feels like there's this tail growing. And so we follow her in her transformation and her relationship with her son and her husband and her relationship with herself as well. So it's a lot about finding yourself and who you truly want to be in a very like absurd way. So I would say this book is way more darker and way more absurd than the movie version of it, because, you know, it's a movie. This one was definitely a weird one, and I still recommend it. I thought I wouldn't really like it, but I still think it was well done. And then last we have the female character that thinks she's an alien, and that is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, one of the weirdest books I have ever read. And I'm scared to read anything else from her, but she has a new one coming out soon. We follow Natsuki as a young girl who is brought to her family's like mountain house with other family members as a young girl, and believes she is from another planet, and she has this little pet hedgehog that is a stuffed animal that is also from that planet and has magical powers, and that's who she talks to. That's her best friend. Her cousin Yu is also at the mountain house with her as well, and they become very close friends, and then circumstances make them separate, and then after a very long time they come back together and have very different opinions on what their youth was like, and it's a very, very interesting dynamic, and that's all I can really say because I don't really know how to explain this book. It's weird. She even has a husband who's very asexual, and you know, they have a very interesting relationship as well. So yeah, just a weird one, and it gets the weirdest at the end, but it's really, really intriguing to read from the perspective of an adult woman who still feels like she is a child believing in aliens and that she is an alien, and it's just a very interesting concept, I would say. But if you're curious, like, this is one of the weirdest books I've ever read, so try it. And the last category is female characters you love to hate. And these feature women that are just not great to other women or take advantage of other women, so you feel like it's justified in hating them, and it's kind of fun to watch them crash and burn. So starting off, we have our main character who is just an awful person and treats her one friend awfully as well, and that is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. Our main character is a blonde, waspy girl who graduated Columbia, skinny, everything that is idealized in our society, and she hates her life. And because of that, thinks she should sleep for an entire year. And in order to sleep, she finds this awful psychiatrist that will prescribe her literally anything she wants, and it will basically drug herself to sleep for an entire year, and she thinks in doing so she can be reborn and know exactly what she wants to do with her life when she wakes up. And so we follow her entire process doing that. And so she's not asleep the entire time, otherwise this would be a very short book, but we see her like transform into this weird drug-infused person that people interact with, and it's a wild ride. I didn't think I would like this as much as I did, but I think the writing got me. I really want to read more from Ottessa Moshfegh. I have Eileen on my list already, and so I thought she did a really good job writing this character where you're like, you don't like her, or you don't even like her friend either, but you're so curious to find out what happens to her and what like awful things she puts herself through. So yeah, if you like that vibe, this is for you. The second book on the love to hate list features a group of women that are just so annoying that you don't care what happens to them or if anything bad happens to them. And that is Bunny by Mona Awad. Our main character, Samantha, goes to this liberal arts college on the East Coast, and she is a writing major. And so for one of her cohorts, she is in a class with this group of girls that all call each other Bunny. They all dress up very girly. They're like basically Barbies in real life. And the way they talk, she feels like they have such annoying presences, but also very intriguing because she feels like they're better writers than her, and they've lived more interesting lives. And so we follow Samantha as she kind of gets roped into this group of women. It's very fever dream-esque. There's one scene one chapter, I think, that I felt weird, so weird, and felt like I was on drugs reading, because it felt like you were really experiencing what she was experiencing in this like fever dream state. And so I thought that was really well done, but also not sure I really enjoyed that aspect, but because it just made me feel weird. But she ends up finding out what this group of women do at night when they're hanging out and having a good time, and it's not what you would think it would happen. And so this is definitely magical realism, surrealism, fever dreamish, speculative fiction, I guess I would say. It's not like strictly fiction and not strictly like fantasy. And so this one is a wild ride. There's not a lot of plot to this. It's really just the characters. And so keep that in mind if you are a plot focused book, but it's a weird one. I'm still not even sure how I feel about this book, honestly. And then last but not least, in the love to hate category, we have a sister who does whatever she wants and leaves our main character, her sister, to deal with the consequences. And that is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This book I read in a day. It's very short. There's not a lot, like the chapters are kind of very short. There's not a ton of writing on the page. So I flew through this, and do I remember a lot of it? No, because I read it so fast. But we follow this woman. It's set in Nigeria. We follow this woman. Her sister is this like ideal, beautiful person that all men want and are obsessed with. And so she gets whoever she wants, basically. And her sister has a tendency to murder her boyfriends after she's done using them, basically. And she calls her sister, our main character, to clean up the mess for her. And she does. And so they have this very interesting sister dynamic and family dynamic as well. And so the main plot of this is our main character is a nurse at a hospital, and she has a crush on one of the doctors, and that doctor then falls in love with her sister, and they start dating, and you know, all the things happen from that. And so it's a wild ride. If you love like weird sister dynamics, I think this is the book for you. And that was really the most interesting part about this book. And that wraps up my books featuring unhinged women. I hope you enjoy unhinged women as much as I do. It's nice to let your freak flag fly a little bit, you know, but you know, do it in moderation. But I love reading about it because I'm really a very self-contained person, and so it's fun to read about other women that can really like let it go in more fantastical or surreal environments. So hopefully you got some good recs. I will definitely be making another version of this further down the line after I've read a few more authors that I've been really interested in getting in the weird girl lit category. But let me know if any of these sound interesting to you, or if you've read any of these. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.